He was saved at 8. But salvation did not lift him out of poverty. The mill still waited. The cold mornings still came. The boy still worked like any other poor Yorkshire child. And yet something inside him had changed. He had fire. He had hunger. He had a burden for souls. But he did not yet have a voice. When Smith was 13, his family left Menston and moved to Bradford, not for comfort, for work. In Victorian Yorkshire, poor families followed wages wherever they could be found. Bradford was smoke, mills, wet stone streets, factory noise, and tired workers moving through gray mornings as if life itself had become machinery. To most people, it was only an industrial city. For Smith, it became the next furnace of God. Bradford changed more than his address. In Menston, poverty had been rural. In Bradford, poverty became industrial. The work did not disappear. The struggle did not disappear. The lack of education did not disappear. Even his clothes carried the signs of poverty. Sometimes his coat sleeves were far too large for him. But in the cold, even that became a small mercy. He learned to receive little things without complaint. In Bradford, Smith entered more deeply into Methodist life. Letters were still difficult. Reading was still not natural to him. And yet, he carried a New Testament with him. That was the contradiction. A boy who could barely master the words still carried the word close to his body. With hands marked by labor, he kept the book near him. Before he could truly master the book was already mastering him. Then came one of the first signs that the hidden fire might one day speak. At 13, in the Methodist Church, Smith was asked to give a 15-minute address for a missionary meeting. They gave him 3 weeks to prepare. 3 weeks for a boy who could hardly read and whose words did not come easily. So he did the one thing he knew to do. He prayed. For 3 weeks, he prayed over those 15 minutes. He did not prepare like a scholar. He prepared like a hungry soul. And when the day came, the rough Yorkshire boy stood up. His words were simple. His learning was small. But something in the room answered. People began to cry, "Amen." Others cried, "Hallelujah." And for a moment, the fire inside him found a way out. But the struggle was not gone. Smith's difficulty with words ran deep. Even in his own home, speech had not always come easily. His mother could begin to explain something, lose the thread, and his father would have to ask her to start again. That same weakness lived in Smith. Thoughts burned inside him, but when he tried to bring them out, the words often broke apart. He loved the meetings where people testified. He loved hearing what God had done. He wanted to speak of Christ, but when he stood to testify, his mouth often failed him. The room would wait. He would try to speak, and then the words would vanish. Tears came first. Not theatrical tears, not weakness for display. The tears of a young man whose burden was larger than his vocabulary. Then God met him in that weakness. One day, as Smith stood weeping, 3 elderly men came to him. They did not mock him. They did not push him aside. They laid their hands on him and prayed. And in that moment, the Spirit of the Lord touched him. Something broke. The painful shyness that had held him began to lose its grip. The voice was still young, still rough, still untrained, but it had begun to be released. Then, around 16, the Salvation Army opened its work in Bradford, and there Smith saw fire in public form. These were not polished religious people. They were men and women who prayed as if eternity was real. They fasted. They cried out for sinners. They spent nights in prayer. They believed God for souls with a seriousness that marked him. Smith saw people fall to their knees under conviction and remain there for hours. He saw believers pray for 50, even 100 souls in a week and expect God to answer. This was not religion as custom. This was war for souls. Brass instruments sounded in the streets. Working people gathered. Prayers rose. Sinners were called to Christ. And Smith stood near that fire, watching what his own heart already understood. He saw people who could do what he still longed to do. They could stand. They could speak. They could call sinners to Christ. They could release the fire publicly. And Smith stood at the edge, burning inside, like a starving man outside a window, watching others give away the very bread his heart longed to carry. He was drawn to their fire, not because it was polished, not because it was respectable, but because it burned. And something in Smith knew this was the language his heart had been waiting for. Bradford had changed him. Methodist life had deepened him. The New Testament stayed close to his hands. The missionary meeting had shown him that the voice could come. The prayers of old men had broken something in his fear. And the Salvation Army had shown him what fire looked like when it moved through ordinary people. But he was not yet the man the world would know. He was not yet the preacher of nations. He was still a poor young Yorkshire worker, rough, untrained, and being formed in hidden places. And before God gave Smith Wigglesworth a voice that would shake crowds, he would first put tools in his hands. The next furnace would not be a chapel. It would be lead, pipes, basements, drains, and the broken souls of Liverpool. The fire had not gone out. It was waiting for a place to work.